This is the mega compilation cut of the January 13th, 2005 broadcast of The National on CFCN.
CTV's Tom Kennedy reports.
Stupid mistake is one of the few polite descriptions. Prince Harry wore the costume here at a weekend supposedly private costume party. But a camera captured it, a newspaper published it, and once again, the wayward prince, as he's sometimes called, is at the center of a storm.
My entire family was wiped out by the Nazis, and for somebody in the royal family to go out wearing a Nazi armband, he may think it's a joke, but it's not.
Stupid and arrogant. Prince Harry should have known better. Certainly, if he didn't know better, people around him should have done.
Within hours of the newspaper's publication, Prince Harry released a statement saying, "I am very sorry if I caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume, and I apologize." But the statement did nothing to blunt the outrage. The photograph has spread around the world and had a particularly powerful impact in Israel. Sylvain Shalom is the foreign minister. We cannot have any sympathy, he says, and cannot understand. More bewilderment among tourists outside Buckingham Palace. This man is German. I find it very sad, he says. Over the years, Prince Harry has been caught smoking dope, drinking underage, scuffling with photographers, but he's also made public gestures of charity for the poor in Africa, more recently for victims of the tsunami. Among some young Britons, there is a faint sentiment, give him a break.
He can dress up how he likes and just having fun like a sort of student that he is.
But the overwhelming sense here is that members of the royal family, representatives of the British state, they should know better. There is some talk here that Prince Harry will have to apologize further, perhaps even attend the international ceremony later this month, marking the 60th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. For now, the royal family continues to say that the prince's written apology is sufficient and the issue is closed, but it is not closed for much of the public at large. Tom Kennedy, CTV News, London.
In the Middle East, it was widely hoped the election of a new Palestinian leader would usher in a new spirit of peace. Well, tonight, less than a week later, those hopes are being sorely tested after a deadly attack on Israelis in Gaza. At least 5 Israelis were killed by Palestinian bombers at a border crossing into Israel. More on the attack and the furious response from CTV's Jerusalem Bureau Chief Janice Mackey-Freyer.
The truck pulled up to the terminal just moments before it was to close. Witnesses say first a massive bomb demolished part of the building. Then it appears 2 suicide bombers unleashed their own explosives. In the dust and smoke, a shootout followed. A hail of bullets, grenades, and mortars, making it difficult for medics to evacuate the wounded. Joint responsibility for the attack was claimed by Hamas and the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, the group loosely affiliated with the Fatah political movement of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Abbas won a landslide victory just days ago, promising to curb militant violence in a bid to revive peace talks and establish a Palestinian state. Just today, Abbas talked of security obligations under the U.S.-backed roadmap. We are ready to implement our commitments, he said. We hope the Israeli side will do the same. But Palestinians say Israel has not at all eased its campaign of arrests, assassinations, and house demolitions. Israel's response tonight, missiles into a Gaza refugee camp that hit a medical clinic said to be linked to Islamic charities. The attack at the terminal underscores the challenge facing Mahmoud Abbas, who has yet to be sworn in as Palestinian president. He has talked of brokering a ceasefire within his first 100 days, though it seems the price of that truce is rising. Janice Mackey-Freyer, CTV News, Jerusalem.
Closer to home now, it was a day of extreme weather, from record highs to the deep freeze. But for others, it was simply a day of extreme driving. That's just ahead and later. A small town in the middle of a large language debate. Still to come on CTV News. Stepping outside was a surprise for many Canadians today. In Toronto, some wore T-shirts as the mercury soared to all-time highs. While on the prairies, the deep freeze deepened. The difference in temperatures almost 60 degrees, and the extreme weather spilled across the border. The ice and snow were too much for these drivers in Denver. Cars careened out of control, causing a chain collision. One woman jumped out of her car and scrambled to get out of the way of the sliding traffic. Another was dragged down the hill. No one was hurt, but at least 28 cars were caught in the pileup. In southern Utah, a homeowner captured the moment floodwaters destroyed 3 houses. At least 20 buildings were swept into the rushing river yesterday. The disaster caused more than $60 million in damage. Residents of a small, quiet eastern Ontario town find themselves in the midst of a language controversy. That's because strict laws governing bilingual signs have come into effect for the first time outside the province of Quebec, and there'll be language police on patrol as well. The municipality of Clarence Rockland is just outside Ottawa, on the road to Montreal. It's long been a chummy place where English and French seem to coexist happily. Now, as CTV's Rosemary Thompson reports, residents are hoping that won't change.
Once a small, mostly French-speaking farm town, Clarence Rockland is growing and sounding more English. So the city passed a bylaw this week reminiscent of Quebec's famous language law, Bill 101, making commercial signs bilingual.
That's a $5,000 fine, but we're going to be working with these people. I don't anticipate any problems.
And there are inspectors to enforce it.
They've got a language police in Rockland now.
Does it mean they're going to have more English?
No, it means they want more French.
Well, I disagree with it then.
Clarence Rockland is Ontario's first municipality to bring in a sign law, and opinion is mixed.
I think French should be on the Quebec side and the English on the Ontario side.
It's pretty good, I think. My husband's English and I'm French, so.
In the old section of town, everything's bilingual. Friendly's restaurants, menu, and staff speak both languages.
So will Friendly's become Gentilles then?
Well, if it was ever to that point, I'd put Gentilles Restaurant or something like that, or Chez Friendly's.
When Giant Tiger came in, the company respected local customs. Then Canadian Tire went up, and this living and fixing and playing sign got people thinking.
You have to be able to live in French, to see French, to live French, to talk French, to be French if you are French in Ontario. Otherwise, you ghettoize the whole situation.
So this is a very sweet town. I see people waving as they go by. Is this going to invite a language war into Clarence Rockland?
I hope not. I know that we have some more radical positions in both camps.
Rockland is just across the river from Quebec, and many thought they could avoid language laws here. But as more and more English families moved in, the French community felt a sign law was the only way to protect their language. Rosemary Thompson, CTV News, Rockland.
Look up privacy in the dictionary and you might just find a picture of a Swiss bank account. But tonight, thousands of those accounts are being made public. So who does the money belong to? And how can it be claimed? That's just ahead. A look at what's coming up in local news is next. The secretive world of Swiss banking was forced open just a crack today. Under a court ruling, Swiss banks published records of thousands of long dormant accounts that may have belonged to the Jewish victims of the Nazis. Posted on the internet, survivors and heirs now have 6 months to file claims to the millions and receive what is rightfully theirs. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin reports.
Anne Kazmierski survived the Holocaust, but 82 members of her family were killed. She was left with no home, no photos.
And I kept it all the time, you know, in my hand.
Nothing but this small souvenir of those she loved.
I haven't gone to it because it was my mother's.
She's checking this list to see if her family managed to leave something else behind, money in a Swiss bank account. 2 of the banks posted records of more than 3,000 accounts likely belonging to victims of Nazi persecution. It's part of a court settlement with Holocaust survivors and their descendants.
It's likely that a good percentage of the claimants are either living in Canada or their relatives are living in Canada.
Before and during the Second World War, thousands of Jews opened Swiss bank accounts hoping to keep their money out of Nazi hands. Many died, and their families say the banks hid much of that money.
They profited tremendously from the war.
The Swiss banks agreed to a settlement worth well over $1 billion back in 1998 and released the names of about 20,000 bank accounts. Only a fraction of the rightful owners came forward then.
The courts forced the banks to release the names of the additional 3,000 accounts. Still, even with this information, tracking down the rightful owners is hard to do.
That means taking those thousands and thousands and thousands of matches and trying to find the right person more than 60 years after the fact.
No.
Kazmierski hasn't found a match yet, but she says if the money isn't claimed, it should be used to help all Holocaust survivors.
Nothing should be left in the bank that doesn't belong to them.
It's not about the money, she says, but about a bit of justice for those who lost so much. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
And briefly, in other news tonight, 3 months after the ill-fated departure from Scotland, HMCS Chicoutimi is again bound for Halifax. A fire aboard the submarine killed one crew member last October. The sub has been welded to the deck of a transport ship. The trip is expected to take about 2 weeks. Major League Baseball is introducing a tougher steroid testing policy for the coming season. The new rules involve more frequent drug tests and stiffer penalties. Several high-profile players, including Barry Bonds and Jason Giambi, were implicated in a steroid scandal last year. And Sidney Crosby has his jersey back. The 17-year-old had a good look at it today. He hadn't seen it since wearing it when Canada's junior team won gold in North Dakota last week. It was stolen during the trip. A Montreal area Canada Post employee found the jersey on Monday. When we return, where's winter?
We came for a snow carving contest. So,
a most
no
unusual mild spell, where you would expect it less. Next on CTV News.
We'll sneak preview Sunday's Golden Globe Awards. Plus, we're shopping with Keisha Shante in Edmonton. It's hot.
E-Talk Daily, tomorrow at 7, 10:30 Central on CTV.
Finally for us tonight, Canadians aren't the only ones wondering about this winter's weird weather. Winter is very much a part of Russia's national spirit. Poets have long celebrated the bitter cold and swirling snows. And it was the Russian winter, after all, that stopped both Napoleon and Hitler. But this year, the season seems to have taken a vacation from the Russian capital. CTV's Ellen Pinchuk has this look at Moscow's meltdown.
What's wrong with this picture? It's the middle of winter, and here at the gates of the Kremlin, the grass is green. Moscow is seeing the warmest January since they began taking records in the late 19th century. This week, temperatures soared to a balmy +5 Celsius, leaving Russians wondering what happened to the famous freezes their country is known for.
Usually we have a lot of snow in this month, and it's very cold, about -10 or so, and now water is everywhere.
This pond is usually full of skaters, not today. Some Russians are out in sweaters. The winter coats are in the closet. While in St. Petersburg, bears have reportedly come out of hibernation. In Moscow, even the birds are enjoying the warm snap. It's like spring, says Vera, who brought her grandkids out to see them. Last year, we were here at the same time of year, and there were no birds around. They must have decided not to go south. The heat is bad news, though, for these ice sculptors in town for an international competition, including 2 Canadians. Trying to make the best of the slippery situation, they hope their creations will hang on, at least until the judging.
It's terrible. We came for a snow carving contest. And there's no snow. So they decided to give us blocks of ice.
I've been to Russia before, snow sculpting at the same time of year, and it's usually -25, -20, so it's kind of unusual, especially when I left Saskatoon and it was -35.
Those here longing for the traditional Russian snows and the pleasures of the season like skiing and sledding can take heart. Meteorologists are predicting a cold snap for next week when temperatures are expected to plunge to -15, and you can be sure many here will be complaining about the cold. Ellen Pinchuk, CTV News, Moscow.
And that's the kind of a day it's been on this Thursday, January 13th. Local news comes next. I'm Lloyd Robertson for all of us here at CTV News. Good night.
CTV News, Canada's #1 newscast. Saturday, a fraud rampage.
$15 to $20 million.
Not a bad payday at all.
Executed by Canada's king of cons.
Where did all the money go?
Why wasn't this con man put out of business? Watch W5 Saturday at 7 on CTV.
Tonight, the owner of a ranch where the latest case of mad cow was found in Alberta speaks out. A province-wide smoking ban is being considered by the provincial government. And a young Calgary girl beats the odds for infant brain surgery.
CFCN News with Ron Mans.
Good evening, everyone. The Central Alberta rancher whose animal was diagnosed with the third case of mad cow disease found in Canada told his story today. Wilhelm Voss lives northwest of Innisfail. He says he's done nothing wrong and worries people may not want to buy his animals now, despite having bought the feed in question nearly a year after the '97 ban. Kirk Hoyser reports.
Wilhelm Voss has been raising cattle on his farm west of Innisfail since 1979. For 20 years now, he's specialized in purebred Charolais cattle. One of his animals injured itself just after Christmas. It was put down and tested. On January 7th, that test came back positive for BSE.
Probably some of the most intense news I've ever got. I mean, it's very hard for me. You know, for us, it's been fairly busy these last few days, as you can imagine.
The contaminated animal never got into the food chain. Voss always feeds his cattle feed he grows himself. But in the spring of 1998, he purchased a nutritional supplement from a local feed store. He wasn't worried about it being contaminated because he bought it after the feed ban was in place. But the CFIA's investigation is now focused on determining where that feed came from and when it was manufactured.
We should not speculate at this point in time to exclude things like some feed that was manufactured prior to the ban that could perhaps be in the system.
Investigators are also tracking the 100 other cattle who got the feed to ensure they didn't enter the food chain. Meanwhile, Voss is left to wonder what all this means for the future of his farm.
The thought is, who's going to buy bulls from me? You know, even though I don't think I did anything wrong, I haven't been accused of anything either.
Wilhelm Voss was asked at any point once he discovered he had a sick animal, did he consider following Premier Klein's advice to shoot, shovel, and shut up? And he says not for a moment. He says the only way that BSE is going to be eradicated in Canada is for everyone to be open about the situation. West of Innisfail, Kirk Hoyser, CFCN News.
Premier Klein tried to clarify his comments yesterday, calling for a major cull of older cows in Canada. He said the industry needs to move to restore international confidence after the third case was found in our province. Today, Klein said that after speaking with Alberta's agriculture minister, he is prepared to let the industry decide the best way to handle the situation. Cattle producers in Alberta, meanwhile, say a mass cull would be a waste, and surveillance programs that